When you think of reptiles, you may think of Australia, Africa, or the tropical rainforests of Asia and the Americas. But there are also some amazing reptile species that live in the British Isles. We have a range of native lizards, snakes, and even turtles, as well as some introduced species that have gained a foothold. In today's episode, we'll learn all about our native lizards, including how to tell them apart, where they can be found, and how they're faring in Britain. Before we talk about reptiles in Britain, we first need to mention the Ice Age and how it has profoundly impacted our reptiles. At this point, the British Isles were already cut off from mainland Europe, and as the climate rapidly got colder, reptiles would have struggled to survive. This glaciation completely eradicated all snakes from Ireland and left only one species of lizard, with only a few cold-adapted reptile species clinging on in the southernmost areas of Britain. As temperatures warmed and the ice receded, surviving species were able to spread north again to reclaim their past range, but any species lost from our islands had no way to recolonise the UK. Today we have 3 native lizards in Britain: the common lizard, the sand lizard, and a legless lizard known as the slowworm. The common lizard, or viviparous lizard, is the most widespread British reptile and is well adapted to our colder climate. They can be found across the whole of England, Wales and Scotland and are the only reptile native to Ireland. They can also be found in a wide range of habitats, from grassland, heathland and moorland to woodland edges and even gardens. Despite being so widespread, they can be tricky to see and they are highly variable in their appearance. They are also our smallest reptile, at only 10 to 15 centimetres long. They can be a range of colours, from the typical sandy brown to greys, greens, blues, oranges, and they can be menalistic too. They have rows of spots and stripes running along their backs and sides, but the amount of patterning varies wildly too. Different populations even have slight morphological differences depending on the habitat they are adapted to, such as slightly longer legs or toes. Luckily, our other reptiles are very distinctive, so they can't really be confused for other UK species. Males tend to be more spotty, and they have a more slender appearance, with larger heads and a lump at the base of their tails. The most distinctive feature though is an orange or yellow underbelly with spots, which gets brighter during the breeding season. Females are more stripy and always have a plain, pale underbelly. They also lack the lump at the base of their tail, and if pregnant will have a large belly. Conversely, juveniles will always look the same, with a copper body and dark grey tail, and they'll eventually develop their adult colours and patterns as they grow. Common lizards are typically active between early March and late October, and will enter a hibernation-like state called brumation for the rest of the year. However, as temperatures rise, we're increasingly seeing them active outside of those months too, particularly on warm days. They ask from mid-morning onwards to warm up and spend the rest of their day hunting invertebrates, which also tend to be most active during midday and early afternoon. Their main prey are small invertebrates, particularly insects and small spiders, which they catch and shake to stun their prey before swallowing whole. However, like most reptiles, they aren't fussy and will eat anything they can, including juveniles. Despite living in so many habitats, they do have some habitat requirements. These include undisturbed warm places to overwinter, such as log piles, dead bracken, heather, and crevices and rocks. They also need places to bask, like bare ground, logs and rocks, which are close to dense cover and vegetation that they can retreat to if needed. Common lizards are quite tolerant of others, but males will fight over mates during the breeding season, which normally takes place in April. Males shed their skin shortly after emerging from hibernation and display their bright undersides to each other as a show of fitness, after which fights may break out. Meanwhile, the females actively seek out males using their sense of smell and will often mate with multiple males they come across. After mating, the female will become pregnant for about 3 months. They are called viviparous lizards. Viviparous means they give birth to live young instead of laying eggs. The female retains developing embryos within her body, providing warmth, nutrients and oxygen through a placenta-like structure. This is unique amongst British reptiles, but is seen in other reptiles around the world like some skinks. They have evolved this way as a response to deal with a colder climate, able to incubate the eggs without relying on the weather to be constantly warm enough for the eggs to develop. Also reduces the risk of the eggs being predated and means the female isn't limited to habitats with suitable nest sites. Overall, this strategy increases reproductive success. In southern Europe, where it's consistently a lot warmer, populations of common lizards still lay eggs. They're the only species to do both. This hints that this is a relatively recent adaptation for the species, at least in an evolutionary timescale. It also shows that while live birth is a good adaptation for colder climates, in warmer climates it's still more beneficial to lay eggs and reduce the amount of investment that the female must have in her young. After giving birth, the juveniles are on their own, needing to hunt for themselves. Young spiderlings are particularly important prey in some habitats. They tend to stick close to dense vegetation near water. Being smaller, they warm up quicker but lose heat faster. And from my experience, they tend to bask earlier in the day than adults, enabling them to find food and run away from threats sooner, and avoid the adults that may eat them. They take 2 years to become sexually mature adults, but adults are not safe from predation either, and are a part of the diet of many animals, from crows and buzzards to foxes and cats, and even other reptiles like sand lizards and smooth snakes. To avoid being eaten, they rely on camouflage, and if spotted, they will dart into the undergrowth and then silently creep away. As a last-ditch attempt to escape a predator, they will wiggle and then drop their tails. This is a defense unique to lizards called autotomy. Their bones can be fractured by their muscles and dropped, twitching and distracting predators as they escape. They will regrow the tail eventually, but it will be shorter than the original and contain cartilage or bone that cannot be fractured in this way, meaning the lizard must drop their tail from further down if it has to do so again. This is a big loss for the lizard, requiring a lot of food and energy to regrow, and harming its ability to protect itself in the future. So as always, it's best not to touch or scare these wild animals. Unfortunately, this lizard is in decline across the UK, and they are no longer seen in large numbers, even at sites that are good for them. In the north they are doing okay and increasing in some areas of Scotland. However, they have practically disappeared from a lot of sites in southern England. The reason for this decline is likely a lack of invertebrate prey. As the summers get warmer, their habitat gets drier and struggles to support invertebrates, particularly the small spiders which are essential prey for hatchling lizards. Insects are in steep decline in Britain, and in the heavily farmed landscape of southern England, where harmful pesticides are used every year, the situation is at its worst. Conservation efforts have started to try to reverse these declines in insect populations and bring back the species that rely on them, including cuckoos and, in the future, even redback shrikes, which would also help this not-so-common lizard recover. Our next lizard is the sand lizard. This is our rarest native lizard, restricted to only a few places in the UK due to its specific habitat requirements. There are only a few places you can see these stunning lizards, but successful reintroductions are continually taking place to expand their range. Currently they are found in these areas, within either sand dune habitats or sandy heathland. Compared to common lizards, sand lizards are a little larger at 20 centimetres long and much thicker, with a robust body and short legs for burrowing, and unlike common lizards, they do not show colour variation. Female sand lizards are a pale sandy brown colour with very distinctive eye markings, or ocelli, along their bodies, which look a lot like leopard spots. Common lizards do not have these markings, and is perhaps the best way to tell apart these species. Males have these same markings, but a bright green along the sides of their body, but not their backs. This colour fades from bright green to a dull green throughout the year. Surprisingly, both males and females are very well camouflaged, with females matching the colour of the sand and males matching the bright green of plants found in sand dunes. These lizards are less well adapted to the cold than the common lizards, emerging from hibernation later in the year and are typically active from mid-April to mid-October. They will bask on the fringes of vegetation on south-facing slopes or patches of sand, rock or dead plants before hunting around midday and afternoon. Males are more likely to be seen as they roam a lot more than females, searching for females and basking spots before claiming their patch. To do this, they use their bright colours to ward off any rival males, and if that fails, they fight. The breeding season lasts from May to June, and they will lay their eggs between June and July, during which the females search for nest sites. These can be rare, as they need to be both the correct temperature all through the season and well protected. The females therefore need to be picky, and will dig lots of test burrows to assess if they are the right temperature and if they are strong enough to not collapse. When she has found the right place, she can lay her eggs and backfill the tunnel to prevent any other creatures entering. She will then leave them to hatch in 1 to 2 months, ready to fend for themselves. The sand lizards need to lay and incubate their eggs, as well as stay warm enough to survive the winter, is the reason for their strict habitat requirements. They need warmer temperatures than common lizards, and these sandy habitats seem to be the only ones in the UK that are warm enough to incubate their eggs. Sand and sandy soil warms up quickly, and it is easy to burrow into to avoid the cold winds and nights, while plants like heather trap warm air, creating one of the warmest habitats in the UK. These habitats are also home to an abundance of their prey. With a stronger skull and bite force than the common lizard, the sand lizard can eat slightly larger invertebrates, crunching through the armour of invertebrates like this pill millipede. They still need to swallow their prey whole, and this one uses the grass to rotate its prey so it can fit down its throat. Like most reptiles, they lick their lips repeatedly after a meal, cleaning themselves to avoid a build-up of bacteria that could lead to disease. While the sand lizard's diet consists mostly of invertebrates, they'll opportunistically eat whatever they can find, including small common lizards. However, they themselves are prey for a range of species, such as birds of prey, corvids, foxes, and smooth snakes, which often share the same habitats. They can also drop their tails when threatened, and will quickly flee into the undergrowth if they detect any potential threats nearby. They also have a unique defense, where they can very quickly burrow into loose sandy soil, creating a safe tunnel, normally if they've detected the vibrations of a creature from a distance. Though this female has accidentally left her tail out, she wasn't quick enough at digging or hit compacted soil. Regardless, she now relies on her camouflage to keep herself safe. With the vast majority of their habitat lost, sand lizards were once on the brink. Sand dune systems are rare, mainly converted to farmland, and the small patches of lowland heath left in Britain represent 20% of all this habitat left in Europe. Heathland is a marching habitat. It's constantly taken over by woodland and constantly spreading over dune systems through succession. However, much was turned into tree plantations and farmland, and what remains has nowhere to spread. The loss of the UK's large herbivores like bison, aurochs and wild boars mean that this succession is happening fast and unregulated. Invasive trees from neighbouring plantations take over far quicker than natural succession would too. Luckily, a lot of work is done to keep these rare habitats in good health for a large number of rare species, by creating patches of bare ground and making sure that plants are a mix of age structures, which mimics the effects of large herbivores. Greater awareness of the risk of wildfires and bans of litter and barbecues on heathland play an important role in saving these remaining patches of habitat. Reintroductions are also helping re-establish our rarest lizard around the UK, and with this continued effort, and hopefully the creation of more of this rare habitat, the sand lizard will soon be thriving once again. Warming temperatures will likely also help this species spread, as more areas reach their temperature needs. Our last and most bizarre lizard is the slow worm. This lizard is widespread throughout England, Wales and Scotland, but is absent from Ireland and the Scottish Islands. They can be found in a wide range of habitats, preferring rough, tussocky grassland, woodland edges and heathland, as well as gardens and allotments across the country. This lizard is often mistaken for a snake, given its long body and lack of legs. Lizards are a different group of animals from snakes though, and have many important differences besides legs. Slowworms have eyelids, which no snake has. Snakes instead rely entirely on nictitating membranes to blink. They also have a thick tongue with only a slight fork, and unlike snakes can drop their tails if threatened. The easiest way to tell them apart though is their lack of a distinct head. A slowworm's head and neck have no visible separation, unlike all of our snakes. They have evolved their legless bodies to help them move through thick tangles of grass and leaf litter, which is where they spend most of their time. For this semi-fossorial lifestyle, legs would only get in the way. They don't even come out to bask, instead gaining all the warmth they need from hiding underneath plants or objects that warm up in the sun, including log piles, leaf litter and stone walls. They are also active at lower temperatures than other UK reptiles, and can even be active in evenings and at night. Slowworms are typically shades of golden brown, but can also be grey or menelistic. Males will sport small blue spots on their back and sides, which are only present during the mating season. Females, however, have distinctive black stripes along the sides of their body, which are present all year round. They are active between March and October, with their breeding season between April and June. During this time, males become aggressive to rivals, and fights break out often, a consequence of living at high densities. Mating without legs to grip is challenging, so males will hold onto the female by biting them, and mating takes several hours. This often leads to scarring, which can sometimes be used to identify individuals if it's deep enough to be present after shedding their skin. These lizards also give birth to live young, but unlike viviparous lizards, they are ovoviviparous. This means that soft eggs are created but retained inside the body of the female for incubation, with all their nutrients coming from the egg yolk, not the mother, and they do not develop a pseudoplacenta either. After about 3 months, around 20 golden black young will be born, dispersing into the undergrowth to fend for themselves. Like all our lizards, slowworms mainly eat invertebrates, which is in contrast to our snakes that predominantly eat vertebrates. Their diet mainly consists of slugs, spiders, worms, caterpillars and millipedes, making them important predators in gardens. They are specialised in eating slugs, with unusually large, backwards curved teeth evolved to grip through the protective sticky slime and swallow the slug whole. They can also digest this slime, which would choke other predators. They are also important prey for adders and smooth snakes, birds of prey, corvids, foxes, badgers, hedgehogs, and even wildcats. A slowworm's main defence is to stay hidden. They move relatively slowly for reptiles, which isn't where the name comes from, but they can use a quick burst of speed to slip into the undergrowth if they're spotted, and they can drop their tails if caught. Slowworms are widespread, and are also the reptile you're most likely to have in your garden. However, they have become a lot less common, being in decline across the UK. Rough open habitats are being developed or turned into farmland, and even parks are being tidied of long grass, dead wood and leaf litter that slowworms, along with butterflies and many other species, rely on. Allotments and large composts and manure heaps aren't just left alone anymore. They're constantly being disturbed for use or distribution, or contained in ways animals can't get into. In gardens, compost heaps are a rarity, as is leaf litter and sheltered areas. Fake grass and slug pellets are still in use, and in urban areas entire populations of slowworms have been eradicated by domestic cats, which instinctively attack these slow-moving reptiles. Wildcats are natural predators, with territories of at least a few hundred hectares of mostly woodland and are solitary, so they do not have a large impact on slowworm populations. However, with on average 1.5 cats per household in the UK, This density of predators in back gardens is simply too much for slowworm populations. Providing undisturbed areas of compost, sheltered places to hide from predators, and a reduction in pesticides could see slowworms do better in urban areas, while leaving dead wood, long grass and leaf litter across the UK in green spaces would provide them with good habitat. So these are our native lizards. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and stay tuned for part 2, focusing on our native snake species, and part 3 on our introduced species, as well as more videos on wildlife in the UK and what you can do to attract these species to your gardens. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.